Boy, let's see if I remember how to do this. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, back for the first time in years to bring you some National Hockey League Stanley Cup playoff predictions. The first round begins for us tomorrow. We are on the eve of the greatest chase for the greatest championship in all of sports, that being the Stanley Cup. It's the best looking trophy. It's the hardest one to win, and we're about to figure out who's going to do just that in 2025. 16 teams from across North America will be vying for the greatest championship in sports, including the 16th and final one, my Montreal Canadiens. It took them until game 81, but ladies and gentlemen, the Habs are back in the playoffs for the first time since 2021. 5 of 7 Canadian teams making the playoffs in 2025, and it feels special. There's something about this year. I know that's the diehard, forever lost hockey fan on the inside, but I'm just like, this feels like the year. But if you don't have "this is our year," what do you have? So before I get into how I actually think the first round of the playoffs is going to go, I wanted to give you a little bit of something of a, statistical breakdown, a data analysis that I looked at for the previous 10 first rounds, specifically the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And what I kind of found as I was looking at that data, and I was kind of looking at key points, like how did teams do when they won the first game of the series? How did teams do when they had a 2-1 lead in the series? Things like that. And I found that in most cases, there's been a shift from how it was for the 5 years immediately leading up to the Panini and the 5 years since the Panini, if you follow me. I'm going to put that data up for you to take a look at now, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of specific points. So over the past 10 years of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and this is from the 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs all the way up to last year's in 2024, teams that won game 1 for the first 5 years of that range of 10 years won 32 of 40 series. So if you won game 1, you had an 80% chance to ultimately go on to win the series over those 5 years. In the most recent 5 years, that has dipped from 80% to 62.5%. The team that wins game 1 is only 25-15 in terms of winning their first round series. So that is a significant drop in terms of percentage, what your chances are from winning that first game. Another one, a 2-1 series lead. For that first 5 years, from 2015 to 2019, if you had a 2-1 series lead in the first round, you won 20 of 29 series overall. Since 2020, and including 2020, those teams are only 18-13. So having a 2-1 series lead is not the safety net that it had been in the previous 5 years. You're looking at a drop from 69% going on to win the series, so almost 70, to just under 60%, 58% of teams who had a 2-1 series lead over the last 5 years in the first round didn't go on to win the series. So the unpredictability factor over the last 5 years has been through the roof. You also take a look at teams that had a 3-1 series lead. Now look, over the last 10 years, it's almost been a lock. Those teams are, 37-4. It's been less likely in the previous 5 years. From 2020 to 2024, teams with a 3-1 series lead have still lost 3 series. Now they've won 18, but that's a 1-7 shot that even with a 3-1 series lead, it's not over yet. So this is where the excitement, the real excitement of the National Hockey League playoffs come into play. And the last thing, I really wanted to look at teams who start their series, start the first round on the road, and break home ice advantage in those first 2 games. We talk about it all the time, how important it is to break home ice advantage. So from 2015 to 2019, a road team that won one of the first 2 games in the series went 13-14. So pretty well a 50-50 shot from that point that you still go on to win the series if you break home ice advantage. But over the last 5 years, the likelihood of that has dipped. those teams have gone to only 12 and 18 in terms of winning their first round series. So even if you break home ice advantage, which, yeah, it's a benefit, but it hasn't been as much of a benefit over the last 5 years as it was the 5 years prior. So it's just interesting to me how some of these stats and some of these outcomes have shifted over the last 5 years as we've come out of the pandemic. And before I get into what I think is going to happen in these first round playoff series, let's take a look at what Vegas thinks is going to happen in these first round playoff series, and basically the implied probability that Vegas is giving us of teams winning their series. We'll start in the Eastern Conference, that Washington-Montreal series right at the top. Washington, a minus 285 favorite right now to win that series. That is a 74% implied probability to beat Montreal. Washington also with plus 950 odds right now to win the Stanley Cup outright, about a 9.5% chance. If you're really feeling frisky, the Montreal Canadiens at plus 8,000, a 1.2% chance to win the Stanley Cup, but just saying there's a chance. The other Metropolitan Division series, the Carolina Hurricanes hosting the New Jersey Devils. Carolina minus 275 to win that series, so almost as juicy as the Capitals to beat Montreal. That's a 73.3% implied probability from Vegas. Jersey is at plus 225. Carolina has plus 800 odds to go all the way and win the Stanley Cup, just a little over 11%. But if you're really believing in the New Jersey Devils, they are currently plus 4,000 at 2.4%. Battle of Ontario, Toronto and Ottawa. Toronto currently minus 180 favorites to win the Battle of Ontario, a 64.3% implied probability. Ottawa at plus 155 to win the series. And if you like the Toronto Maple Leafs to go all the way, they are currently plus 1,200 to win the Stanley Cup at 7.7%. The Ottawa Senators plus 3,500 to go all the way and win the Stanley Cup, 2.8% implied probability. And the Battle of Florida, Tampa Bay and the Florida Panthers. This is really interesting because it's the only series where there's juice on both sides. Tampa minus 105, Florida minus 115 to win the series. So it's slightly more than 50% odds going both ways, which is really, really interesting. Florida is considered a marginal favorite there. Now, if you like the Panthers to go all the way and repeat as Stanley Cup champions, they are currently plus 750, 11.8, and the shortest odds to win the Stanley Cup. Tampa Bay, for their part, plus 1,100 at 8.3%. We go to the other side of the table and we look at the Western Conference, the Winnipeg Jets playing host to the St. Louis Blues. Winnipeg minus 210 favorites to win that series, a 67.7% implied probability there. The Jets are plus 1,000 or a little over 9% implied odds to win the Stanley Cup. The St. Louis Blues at plus 4,000 to win the Cup, 2.4%. Dallas and Colorado, the other Central Division matchup here. The Colorado Avalanche, despite being the lower seed, actually minus 150 to win this series. Obviously, there's a big injury there with Dallas and Jason Robertson, which is looming large over this series. Minus 150 for the Avalanche, 60% implied odds to win the series. But currently, the Dallas Stars, plus 125 to win this series, plus 750 to win the Stanley Cup. So tied for the shortest odds across the board to win the Cup. Colorado, plus 775 to win the Cup. They're both around 11.5%. Vegas and Minnesota, the Golden Knights winning the Pacific Division this year, minus 240 are the Golden Knights to beat the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota plus 195 to win that series. It's a 70.5% implied probability for the Golden Knights to take this series, and they are plus 850 to win the Stanley Cup as a whole, just around 10.5%. But if you're really a believer in the Minnesota Wild, there's plus 4,000 odds that are available out there, which is an implied probability of 2.4% for Marc-Andre Fleury to take the Wild all the way to the Stanley Cup. And the final first round matchup, the Los Angeles Kings and the Edmonton Oilers. Another instance where the Edmonton Oilers, the lower seed in this matchup, are currently the favorites to win the matchup at -135. So this one's obviously a close one because that's only 57.5% implied odds for the Oilers to take it home. The Kings currently +115 to win the series. The Edmonton Oilers are +850 overall to win the Stanley Cup, the same odds as the Vegas Golden Knights at 10.5%. The Kings +2,000 to take the cup, 4.8%. So now that I've choked all your horses with all of those numbers and all those statistics, what do I think is going to happen? Let's start in the Western Conference. We'll start with the Central Division champions, the Winnipeg Jets, playing host to the St. Louis Blues, the number 2 wildcard seed in the Western Conference. Winnipeg, 54 regulation and overtime wins on the season, which is tops of any team in these playoffs. Of course, they won the President's Trophy for a reason. 30-11 in Winnipeg this season. They got the job done on the road too at 26-15. St. Louis, 40 regulation and overtime wins. 24-17 at home, but a game under 500 on the road. And I think this is ultimately where it's going to wind up going. I don't see St. Louis taking a game off of Winnipeg in Winnipeg. This feels like a gentleman's sweep to me. Let's take the Jets in 5 games, where the Jets actually get out to a 3-0 series lead. St. Louis desperate. They win game 4 on home ice. Winnipeg wraps it up in game 5 in Winnipeg. Jets move on. The other Central Division matchup there is the Dallas Stars, obviously playing host to the Colorado Avalanche, C2 and C3. The Stars, 48 regulation and overtime wins on the season. Colorado, 45 regulation and overtime wins on the season. Both of these teams pretty similar here, actually. Both pretty good at home. Both got the job done on the road. What I am concerned about is the Dallas Stars really did stumble down the stretch here. 3-5-2 in their final 10 games, losing 4 straight to close out the season. Now, I get they were kind of where they were going to be. Like, they weren't going to catch Winnipeg and Colorado wasn't going to catch them. So they did kind of take their foot off the brake a little bit. But, I mean, they stumbled into the playoffs. The Robertson injury is definitely there, and I think really matters in this series. I like the Avalanche in 6. Give me Colorado to win this thing in 6 games. I think they split the first 4 with Dallas winning game 1, but I've got Colorado winning game 5 in Dallas and then winning game 6 on home ice. Colorado beats Dallas. In the Pacific, the Vegas Golden Knights, obviously as the champions there, 49 regulation and overtime wins this season, 29-12 at home, extremely good in Vegas, and about 50-50 on the road. Minnesota, 42 regulation and overtime wins, 22-19 at home, 23-18 on the road, so pretty well average there. I had originally felt like maybe this series was going to go the full distance. I just think Vegas has a little too much firepower here. I'm going to take Vegas to win this in 6 games. I think Vegas wins the first 2. I think it's basically a home game series until the very end of it in game 6. I just don't see Minnesota beating Vegas 3 times in Minnesota. So I got Vegas winning the first 2. I got Minnesota winning 3 and 4. Vegas wins 5, and then Vegas closes out the series in game 6 in Minnesota. And I've got the Los Angeles Kings and Edmonton Oilers, obviously, as the final playoff matchup in the West. Again, very similar regulation and overtime win totals here. LA had 47, Edmonton had 48. Kings 31-10 in Los Angeles this season. So obviously very, very good in their home building this year. And I do think the Kings win the first 2 games of this series. Edmonton, 25-16 in Edmonton, 23-18 on the road, so they are capable of winning a road game. The real Achilles heel here for Los Angeles, they were 7 games under 500 on the road this year. They did not travel very well at all, which is in stark contrast to years past when they've been kind of a road warrior team the last couple of times that I did playoff predictions. Certainly not the case right now. So, LA wins the first 2 games in LA, but then I think Edmonton reels off 4 straight, including all 3 games that take place in Edmonton. I've got the Oilers winning this series in 6 games. LA goes up 2-0. Edmonton, boom, 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 boom. 4 games to 2, Oilers move on. We go to the East now. The Washington Capitals and my Montreal Canadiens, champions of the Metropolitan Division versus the 16th and final team to get into the postseason. Washington 49 regulation and overtime wins this season, 26-15 at home, 25-16 on the road. So pretty even money no matter where they were. Montreal 38 regulation and overtime wins in 2024-25, 23-18 at the Bell Center in Montreal, but like Los Angeles, 17-24 on the road. So again, if you can't win on the road, it's a difficult task to try to win a Stanley Cup. You got to figure out, if you can figure out how to do it on the fly, awesome. But if you can't, it's tough. I just don't see them beating Washington here. But I think the series goes the distance. Give me a 7-game series, a fun and exciting young hockey team against, Alex Ovechkin setting the goals record this year. What kind of emotional dump might you see from, the Great 8 chase or the Great Chase or whatever you wanted to call it? What kind of emotional dump might you see as they oh man, now all these games matter again. All these games are for real. I think Washington wins the first 2 games. I think they split games 3 and 4 in Montreal. I think Montreal wins game 5 in Washington, wins game 6 in Montreal. It goes back to Washington for 7, and I just think Washington gets the job done. But I will say this, in a game 7 scenario, obviously anything can happen. And it really will probably come down to the goaltending between either Sam Montembeault or Charlie Lindgren, a former Canadiens goaltender. It depends which one of them gets hot. And if Montembeault gets hot, they can absolutely steal a game 7. But as I sit right now, I have to believe Washington is the team that moves on. And for Montreal, this is an incredible experience for this young team. I think still the youngest team in the NHL by a lot. The other Metropolitan Division matchup, the Carolina Hurricanes and the New Jersey Devils, Metropolitan 2 versus Metropolitan 3. Carolina, 47 regulation and overtime wins this season, 31-10 in Carolina, a very tough out on their home ice, but 16-25 on the road this year. Carolina really struggled to figure out ways to win away from home. And once again, that could loom very large as we get later in the postseason. The Devils, only 40 regulation and overtime wins this season, 19-22 at home, but 23-18 on the road. So thanks for coming, New Jersey, but especially with the Hughes injury, I think this is gentleman's sweep territory again. I'll spoil the anime. I don't have any sweeps of anything here. I've got everything going at least 5 games. This is the 5-game series, I think, or the most likely 5-game series, I should say, in the Eastern Conference. I think Carolina gets out to a 3-0 lead. New Jersey gets desperate. They win game 4. Carolina comes back on home ice and wins game 5. Carolina moves on in 5 games. Now, the Battle of Ontario, the Toronto Maple Leafs, first-time champions of the Atlantic Division. They play host to their Ontario rivals, the Ottawa Senators, as the top wildcard team. Toronto, 50 regulation and overtime wins this season, 27-14 in Toronto this year, and 25-16 on the road. These Leafs can win no matter where they are, and I feel like genuinely this is the best version of the Toronto Maple Leafs that we have seen in the Auston Matthews era. The Ottawa Senators, 43 regulation and overtime wins this season, an equal record at home of 27-14, but 5 games under 500 on the road. So the question is, can Ottawa win in Toronto? The answer to that question, I believe, is yes. I think they split the first 4 games of the series, including Ottawa shocking Toronto in game 1 in Toronto. I think Ottawa wins the first game of this series, but it's 2-2 through 4 games. I think Toronto wins game 5. I think Ottawa comes back and wins game 6 in Ottawa. And in game 7 in Toronto, the Ottawa Senators upset the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ottawa moves on to the second round. I said it and I meant it. I think this is the best version of the Leafs that maybe there has been in the Auston Matthews era. I don't necessarily know that means that they win this series. Ottawa feels like an underdog that is alive to me. I'm taking the Senators. as the Dogs to upset the Leafs. And the final Atlantic Division playoff matchup, the Tampa Bay Lightning playing host to the Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions. Tampa Bay 45 regulation and overtime wins in 2025. 29-12 at home was Tampa Bay. Only 18-23 on the road. But again, this is one of those series where it's gonna kind of be home games for both teams. You know what I mean? Like Tampa Bay and Sunrise, I guess it is, where the Panthers play. The Panthers 41 regulation and overtime wins in 2025, 27-14 at home, but a game under 500 on the road at 20-21. Much like the Dallas Stars, the Florida Panthers limped into the end of the season. Highly injured, resting stars. They only won 3 of their final 10 games, including losing 2 to close out the season. Now, of course, their fans will be like, well, we were resting. Those games didn't matter. And you're not really wrong. Like, Florida does strike me as a team that doesn't care who they play in the first round. In a series that goes the full length, 7 full games, I like the Tampa Bay Lightning to beat the Florida Panthers. We will have a new Stanley Cup champion in 2025. I think Tampa gets it done. And quite similar to the previous series, I think this is a split series at 2 games apiece after the first 4 games. Tampa wins games 1 and games 4. Florida winning games 2 and 3. I think it becomes a home team series after that. Tampa wins game 5. Florida wins game 6. Tampa wins game 7 on home ice. I've got the Lightning beating the Panthers. There you go, folks. Those are my predictions for the first round. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. I enjoyed this. I think I might try to do this again for the second round, assuming that I don't go 0-8. What are your predictions for the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs? Let me know in the comments section down below, and enjoy the games which begin tomorrow. Again, the chase for the Stanley Cup, there's nothing like it in sports.